What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 15 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. And let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Real quick, before getting into our breakdown, a quick word from our partners at PrizePicks, which is our favorite DFS site of choice this NFL and fantasy football season. If you guys aren't familiar with them, do yourself a favor and check them out. In fact, when you sign up right now and use code ADP, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100. And look, we're already doing all this research for fantasy football matchups. So why not take advantage of it and get some profits as well? PrizePicks, well, they allow you to basically do exactly that. They have so many different player prop bets, not only in terms of single stat DFS, but also in terms of fantasy score. And you can combine them any which way you want. Super simple, super easy to use. All you have to do, choose two more players from the board, and then just pick the over-under on their projected fantasy score or on their single stat. Again, pretty much for every single matchup as the week progresses, those options will be updated even more so. And then the great thing is you've got two different options in terms of how you want to bet it, whether it's a flex play, so that way you can miss one of your selections but still win. Obviously, that's the safer choice. Or if you want more bang for your buck, check out the power play, where if you get all your picks correct, well, you win even bigger. So again, check all of that out. Details in the description. And we kick off Week 15 on Thursday night with the Chiefs at the Chargers. As far as the running back position is concerned here, let's start with the Chiefs. This is where it's a little bit easier to predict, even though, you have somebody like a Darrell Williams who probably is making some CEH owners a little bit nervous. But I would say to that, you look at the game film, you look at the opportunity, CEH still has more rushing attempts, more opportunities in the red zone. I still believe he is the top running back of choice for this Chiefs offense, and it's a good matchup versus the Chargers. I think the main thing to realize is that there isn't, for fantasy purposes, a true RB1 on this roster. CEH probably belongs in the mid-level RB2 range for the remainder of the season. As far as the Chargers, this is where it would normally be very easy, set and forget type of situation with Austin Ekeler. But the reason you see an asterisk next to his name, he gets injured this last week, ankle injury. Now, from the reports that are coming out, supposedly not horribly serious, he could have potentially come in that game if he was needed again, but that didn't happen. And obviously, this is a little bit tough to predict because it is a short turnaround. You don't know how that injury is going to react, and it's a Thursday night game. So again, if this was another Sunday game, then Ekeler probably plays, and there's not as much, confusion about it. Now, ultimately, if the reports are that he could have gone in last week, I'm guessing he plays, but just probably with a smaller upside than normal. If for some reason Ekeler does not play, I wouldn't get cute here. I don't think any one of these Chargers running backs, Justin Jackson, Josh Kelly, kind of the top two names that took over for the Chargers once Ekeler was out of that game, really have the same type of upside. I think it's going to be a running back by committee. So right now, alongside with all those Ekeler owners, I am crossing my fingers that he plays because he is still an RB1 when on the field, especially in PPR formats. Then Raiders at the Browns. For the Raiders, it's simple. It continues to be Josh Jacobs. He's getting awesome pass catching opportunities without Kenyon Drake. Now, for what it's worth, last week, only 9 rush attempts, but that's because it was an absolute blowout versus the Chiefs, and the Raiders had to pass the football. I don't think that's going to happen again here versus the Browns. The Browns don't have that high octane of an offense. For the Browns, you've got Nick Chubb, who is going to be the top choice. Now, I have listed Kareem Hunt. Probably, an asterisk should be next to his name because similar to an Austin Ekeler, he gets nicked up this last week. Reports are that he could have also come back in if needed. The good thing is this is a Sunday game, so he should have a little bit longer, to kind of rehab that injury. But if that's the case and he can play here, then in PPR formats, not the worst option in the world. The Raiders defense doesn't scare me all that much. If he does play, I wouldn't get too cute with D'Ernest Johnson. Even if Hunt doesn't play, I'm still not playing D'Ernest Johnson. It's Nick Chubb's backfield, and Kareem Hunt kind of in that boom or bust category. So I would say beware. If it's a standard format, do not play Kareem Hunt. Then we go to the Patriots at the Colts. Here, I only really have confidence in Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that's probably the easy part of this equation. But for the Patriots, you got Damian Harris, you have Ramondre Stevenson. The last couple of weeks, they've had a combination of very favorable opponents and then game conditions that just call for running the football. Well, I don't think, you're going to see another blizzard, another windstorm here versus this game against the Colts, and the Colts have a pretty good defense. That's why I think the upside for both Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson is going to be limited. It's essentially, somewhat a running back by committee there for the Patriots. Maybe Damian Harris has the slightly higher upside, but I do mean ever so slightly. And at the end of the day, both these guys will be touchdown dependent. If they don't get in the end zone, they're probably going to bust for you. I wouldn't consider either one in a PPR format. That's personally where I stand in this matchup. Then Titans at the Steelers. A little bit tough for the Titans. I go down to Foreman here with them. He did kind of get a little bit seemingly hurt in that game last week, which I do think is why you saw some higher usage for guys like McNichols and for Hillard at certain points in time, but it looks like Foreman is the preferred option. Now, I think he's probably a low-end RB2. Definitely some boom or bust potential there, but the Steelers have been very friendly against the run for what it's worth. And then for Pittsburgh, this is the easy part. Najee Harris, I like the matchup, coming off a good game, gets usage as a pass catcher, great rushing opportunities, so fire up Najee Harris as, probably a low-end RB1. Then we go to the Panthers at the Bills. This one is going to be a little bit ugly for fantasy purposes. I hate every single Panthers running back here. I think this is going to be an absolute blowout. The Bills are going to beat the brakes off the Panthers, who don't have an answer at the quarterback position, which means they usually fall behind quickly. They have to abandon the run, and that makes Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah, guys that you can't really trust. I mean, if Hubbard didn't get in the end zone last week and get a touchdown, his day would have been absolutely horrendous. The pass catching upside isn't there for him. This is an awful Panthers offense. The Bills have a good rush defense. I'm sitting both of these guys. But for the Bills, I think, like I said, this is a game where it could be a blowout for them. And in those situations, the running backs are going to take over. I think it's going to be Devin Singletary when you consider Zach Moss has been a healthy scratch several times this year. I'm not all that high on Matt Breida. So to me, Singletary actually has, I think, some decent high-end running back 2 upside on the week. Next up, we've got Washington at the Eagles. And I'll start the 2 top names here in Antonio Gibson and Miles Sanders. I kind of view them in terms of similar upsides on the week. Mid-level RB2s, potentially if things break right, high-end RB2s, they find the end zone, something like that. Gibson obviously coming off a very tough performance where Washington didn't show up at all. Heineke just looked horrendous, and that's why I just have a tough time believing in this Washington offense. But I do think this matchup versus the Eagles potentially is going to be closer. The Eagles offense also tends to struggle, so I don't think we're going to be in a situation where Washington is down like 20 plus, something like that, which is why I don't think the rushing attack is going to be abandoned, and the opportunities will be better for Gibson. And then same situation for Miles Sanders. I think he has the highest upside out of any running back in Philly. We'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts. Hopefully he comes back, and if he does, sure, he's going to take away some rushing upside from Sanders, but to me, Sanders is still the primary guy. But again, both kind of in that mid-level RB2 conversation. And then I would sit the backups here, McKissick and Boston Scott, that is. I think they're too volatile and, more bust than boom. So for that reason, I would pass on both of those options. Afterwards, Texans at the Jaguars. James Robinson, only name I'm interested in. And yes, I'm already hearing the chatter. Don't get me wrong. Bench James Robinson. These last 2 weeks have been absolutely awful. This last week, he played like 60% of offensive snaps, something like that. That's absolutely inexcusable. Urban Meyer is just ruining the Jaguars. But hear me out. This is a game versus the Texans. The Jaguars, this is a very friendly matchup. And I think they will lean on James Robinson here. I think he is due for a bounce back game when the matchup is this great. I tend to believe in the talent, and the talent is there for James Robinson. Again, the only way that James Robinson is foiled here, I think, will be because of Urban Meyer. And even if he gets 60% of offensive snaps, I think that's good enough for a low to mid-level RB2 performance, especially versus the Texans. As far as the Houston side of it, Rex Burkhead, David Johnson, whoever it is, I don't really believe in either one. Yes, Burkhead had a good opportunity this last week because David Johnson was on COVID watch. If he comes back, though, probably another running back by committee, and that's kind of what I'm anticipating, so I would pass on both these names. Afterwards, Cowboys at the Giants. Ezekiel Elliott, obviously easy start. Tony Pollard banged up, so not mentioning him. Zeke is in the RB1 conversation. Saquon Barkley had a decent performance. But again, I still think he's more of an RB2 than an RB1. Zeke, the preferred option here. Then Cardinals at the Lions. I'll start James Conner and Chase Edmonds. Now, at the time of this recording, the Cardinals haven't yet played, so we don't really know how Chase Edmonds is going to be utilized. But I think in this matchup versus the Lions, both Conner and Edmonds can be viable. I think Conner is the much better option. As we saw, while Edmonds was out, he can kind of do it all in my opinion. But Edmonds in PPR, leagues, I think he's going to have some decent opportunities as well as kind of a high-end RB3, low-end RB2. And for the Lions, if he plays, obviously you start DeAndre Swift. And if he doesn't, then Jamal Williams potentially coming back, didn't play this last week. I think he could do a lot worse. I would have him as a low-end RB2, but that's again, only if Swift doesn't play. If Swift does play, Jamal Williams is a sit for me. Then Jets at the Dolphins. Michael Carter, you start him if he's available. Should, technically be able to come off the IR. If he doesn't, though, it's going to be Coleman. It's going to be Ty Johnson. I don't like either one. I think it's going to be a running back by committee type of situation. I don't trust the Jets offense. So if Michael Carter isn't there, I'm passing on the Jets backfield. For the Dolphins, though, Myles Gaskin, great opportunity here versus the Jets. I think he could be a mid to high-end RB2 on the week. Afterwards, Bengals at the Broncos. For the Bengals side, it's easy. It's Joe Mixon. He's an RB1 type of talent. Let's move on. For the Broncos, this is where it's really tough. Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, do you start one? Do you start both? Do you start neither? This last week versus the Lions, there were both good starts, and we hit on that the week prior. We said, you guys should feel pretty confident with both as high-end RB2s. Now I think it's going to be a little bit tougher versus the Bengals, and all those Javonte Williams truthers out there, I know this probably isn't what you want to see or hear, but I have him as a sit. Melvin Gordon was getting the bulk of the rushing opportunities. And I do think, especially at a crucial time like this, in an opponent like the Bengals, the Broncos are going to lean a little bit more so on Melvin Gordon. I still think both these guys are touchdown dependent. I could absolutely see where Javonte Williams does have success. But again, I think it's going to depend on the touchdowns. So right now, a little bit too risky for me. I'd rather go with Melvin Gordon. But I think, even if they both have success, they're both probably low-end RB2s on the week. So have that, kind of in the back of your mind. Then we go to the Falcons at the 49ers. For the Falcons, I'm sticking with Cordarrelle Patterson. Kind of been touchdown dependent these last few weeks. Mike Davis has gotten a little bit more involved. But, I still believe in Patterson more so than I do in Mike Davis. And Davis still long-term not somebody that I have faith in starting week in and week out. I'd rather sit him. Patterson, because of his versatility as a running back, as a wide receiver, I would start. I have him in a mid to high-end RB2 on the week for the 49ers. As long as he plays Elijah Mitchell, he's the only 49ers running back that I trust. Clearly, that's the way the 49ers feel as well. Without Mitchell, they just don't give the same opportunities to any other running back. So to me, it's Mitchell or bust. I think he can be, a high-end RB2, potentially low-end RB1. If he doesn't play, I wouldn't bother with Jeff Wilson. Then Seahawks at the Rams. This is going to be really tricky here. Rashaad Penny coming off a huge performance. He was given the opportunities. The question is, what happens versus a better opponent in the Rams, and is it going to be sustained? Now, he's going to be a hot waiver wire commodity probably. I'd kick the tires on it. Again, I think you could do worse. I think he's probably a low-end RB2, definitely boom or bust there, just because the Seahawks offense, it's kind of a situation where it's up and down, tough to predict, so keep that in mind. For the Rams, if he plays Darrell Henderson, COVID list this week, starting to maybe get a little bit worrisome that if he misses more time, Sony Michel could kind of usurp him and get more opportunities. We'll see, maybe similar to what we saw with Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray, but I'm still a Darrell Henderson believer. If he plays, I'd go with him, and then I would be fading Sony Michel. And then I'm sitting at Alex Collins for the Seahawks. I think Penny, seemingly for what's left of the year, has the hand up there, so I'd go with him. Next up, we go to the Packers at the Ravens, and here I'll start Aaron Jones. Yes, he's coming off some good touchdown success this last week versus the Bears. A.J. Dillon did outrush him, a little bit concerning, but how much of that was because of the opponent and the fact that the Packers kind of pulled away as the game progressed? I would point that out here. I think A.J. Dillon, unless he gets in the end zone, just a little bit too tough to trust, but we'll see. I just personally prefer Aaron Jones. I think he is a little bit safer. But if this continues in terms of A.J. Dillon getting more and more opportunities, Aaron Jones kind of goes down the rankings and probably more so a mid-level RB2. For the Ravens, Devonta Freeman, I'm going to continue to go with him. He's won this backfield, and he's a solid mid-level RB2, even potentially, I believe, without Lamar Jackson, which could be the case. Freeman's still getting the opportunities. The Ravens probably then even more so focus on running the football. Latavius Murray, he's become an afterthought, so sit him there. Then we go to the Saints at the Bucks. This one's pretty simple. Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette. Not even going to mention the other options here. And the reason for that is because first and foremost for the Saints, Kamara is the number one guy. But I think having Taysom Hill there has kind of taken Mark Ingram completely out of the equation. That's kind of what worries me. Yes, Kamara coming off a big game versus the Jets, but versus his Buccaneers defense, especially the front of it, I'm a little bit nervous that Kamara does have bust potential on the week. I think he's going to need that pass catching ability to kind of save him. We'll see if he delivers. I think Leonard Fournette's actually the better play here. I much rather prefer him. I think he's a high-end RB2 on the week, even versus this stingy Saints defense. And then finally, we get the Vikings at the Bears. Again, this is a rather easy one. Dalvin Cook, you start. He came back last week. People were wondering, whether he'd get his normal chances. Vikings said, we need this guy for a playoff run. He delivered big time. I think he has the same type of upside in RB1 for the Bears. Vikings defense doesn't scare me. I like Devin Montgomery. Obviously not the same type of upside as Dalvin Cook, but I think he can be a high-end RB2, low-end RB1. And with that, we wrap up our Week 15 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.